Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Today, I am talking with three awesome app developers about app shortcuts and how they adopted it in iOS 16. So I'm just going to bring them in and let's all say hi, everybody. Will, why don't
Hello.
you start out? Introduce yourself and tell people what apps you run.
Sure. So my name's Will. I'm from Adelaide, Australia. I've released 4 apps, but I've been focusing recently on an app called Pestle, which aims to make cooking easier and more accessible for everyone.
Nice, nice. Michael?
Yep. Hey, I'm Michael from Melbourne, Australia. I've created my two main apps are Focuswork and Ohi. First one's a super powerful timer that helps you have really productive days, and the other one blocks apps and websites during the day, so you can stay away from that pesky Twitter feed.
Nice. Emmanuel?
Yep, I'm Emmanuel Covizier, living in Miami primarily these days, and am the creator of the app Card Pointers, which basically helps you earn more from your credit cards that you have, earn more points, and save cash in the process as well.
Nice. All right, everybody, welcome to the stream. Thanks, guys, for joining. And we got a bunch of people in the chat too, so we'll be like taking questions and interacting with everybody in the chat. So if you see something that you want to respond to, feel free to like shout it out on stream. And everybody, if you have questions, please let us know, and we'll definitely get to them. All right, so I mean, I just wanted to start out and just say, like, first of all, congratulations on getting to iOS 16. I'm sure that's always extremely stressful over the summer. And it's just tons of fun to see everybody adopting app shortcuts. I feel like that's at least my super exciting new thing. I've got lock screens, of course, all over the place, way too many as usual, but I feel like app shortcuts I want to have this stream to basically bring on developers who have already adopted app shortcuts, see what your experience was like, see people who, Emmanuel, you've gone like way into it, which I love. And so you also have been like a cheerleader in the developer community, helping people understand how this even works and stuff like that. So I guess I just want to like open the conversation to you guys and see what your experience was like. And yeah, I don't know. Anyone want to start?
I feel like we should start with like Emmanuel because he's gone the most wild with it. With,
Sure.
We'll go by
thousands
order
and
of like how
thousands
many.
of shortcuts. How many shortcuts do we have? We'll rank it that way.
Sure. So yeah, when I launched, I had 1,600 automated shortcuts, thanks to app shortcuts and the way they work with the parameters. The reason why it went kind of so crazy is Apple gave me no actual limits for how many I could do, and I kind of kept pushing the limits and pushing the limits, and I thought that the system would break, and it never did. So I basically populate the shortcuts app with every single store name and category of a purchase that a person could use. The idea being that the user could then just ask Siri card pointers for Starbucks, card pointers for Target, any kind of store, and it would tell you right away which of your cards to use there to earn the most points and save money. So yeah, I went kind of crazy there, and I added a few other app shortcuts as well as kind of shortcuts into the app, give you quick views of common views that a user would want to see in the app. Yeah, kind of went crazy from there, but so far user reception has been really good.
Nice. That's awesome. I love it. I mean, especially, I feel like yours just makes so much sense because you're going to be at all these different places and not really remember which card you need. And so all you need to remember is that you need your app and where you are, and then it's like good to go. So I feel like that's awesome. And I'm always just saying it's like, it's basically free money. It feels like if you already have the card and you're there and you're using it, or you're using a different card, you're like losing out on something. And I don't know, why give money to the credit card company when you could take it for yourself? I feel like that's just like, who cares about them? I care about me way more. So like, I love your idea.
Thanks. Yeah,
I'm just trying to get a bigger push into Australia.
So what about you, or Will, or Michael?
Well, I've got 22. Does that mean I'm second rank or?
Yeah, you are. I've only got 11. There you go.
Okay.
I don't need to measure app shortcuts, but
Yeah, okay. So with focused work, pretty much like the premise of the app is to start a focus session that like helps you structure out your work and have a productive like focus session pretty much, right? And yeah, the way it leveraged app shortcuts pretty much is to make it super easy to start a focus session. That I almost said the actual voice assistant name, but you just be like, hey, voice assistant, like start a Pomodoro session, right? And then like I got my iPad to my side here, and then that will just like kick open the app and just start the timer with like my segmented work breaks, right? And there's like a few other bells and whistles that also like tie into shortcuts around for that. But yeah, just having that like initial barrier to like not even need to go into the app and just, you know, speak to Siri and just tell it to do something. Yeah, like amazing that I could just like sit at my desk and just get started without the overhead of like, you know, mentally preparing. I can just like do work. Yeah, that's been really awesome to put together. In terms of like, you know, the new APIs been fantastic in short, but yeah, it's been good fun, and like it's
what's
just
fantastic
amazing
about it. Just because, wasn't it? I feel like I'll just say, wasn't it not good at all before, or like really difficult? I don't want to be rude or something, but I'm just trying to be like, so you guys don't know, you don't have to say it. It's like it's definitely better this year and a lot easier to adopt.
Yeah, I'd say it. Yeah, it's just easier. Yeah, mostly. But yeah, like from a developer standpoint as well. Just getting everything set up and like not having to like spend a day having all those automations like, you know, like I guess like configured. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, I mean, I'll go ahead and be a little bit rude because I will not miss intent definition files at all. The way to create those before as a developer, it's just this kind of clunky, it's basically like a graphical user interface, which, you know, most programmers aren't really big fans of. And this way it makes it so much simpler. Like in just a few lines of code, you can build a really simple basic app intent that will do really cool things inside of your app, depending on how you've structured things. So it could be just a matter of a few minutes, and you could add, you know, a few app intents, a few app shortcuts that are super useful for users that you just couldn't do before. It was just really clunky to configure these before and to work on it if you want to collaborate with someone.
Yeah.
I never even touched the previous definition files. Like I went to use them once and I thought, oh, this is too much for me. And I tried for a little bit, and I think I just got like compilation problems and I never got around to it. And I thought, I'll revisit this when someone makes it easier. And, you know, they did this year.
Nice. That's cool. Michael, weren't you saying you like just started putting some shortcuts together just for an app and it only took you a few hours?
Yeah, last night. Yeah, I've gotten started on my third big app. And I thought last night I'd just try it out and like see how long it'll take to set up the whole Siri shortcuts and app shortcuts side of things. Yeah, literally like less than 2 hours. I've like got, oh, actually it's on my phone, but I think I've got like, you know, 20 different recommendations already set up that you just, you know, tell it to perform an action. Like in short, it's a timer app, so you just like tell it to start a timer, right? And then the app like goes and does its thing, and yeah, it's
That's
just
cool, though.
incredible that like it less than 2 hours, you know. And going into this is like the kind of app that I know that it'll need to be localized in different languages as well, and yeah, localizing that intent definition file was a mess. Like I did that with Focuswork and Ohi, but like geez, it's just yeah, like it's just so easy now. You can just like literally pass in like localized text to whichever file that, you know, that might contain a specific shortcut, and it's just like, yeah, it's so easy now. I can't believe it. It's great.
It kind of sounds like shortcuts will just be more available to people around the world, not in the developer's native language then too, just because it's like if it's trivial. Or like,
yeah, definitely.
I think it seemed like before shortcuts were like I'll get to it maybe, or like it's like P3 or something, like I don't know, other priority, and now if it's like something you can put together in a day, or I mean I don't know, obviously it depends on the complexity of your app, but like,
I mean that's kind of what prompted me, you know, with Pestle. I never wanted to do it because I just knew how difficult it was, but then as soon as it became so much easier that it's almost something you can do as like a distraction if you're sick of working on another part of your app. You can go, you know, I'll do something fun today. I'll just put some app shortcuts. And once you kind of get your head around the initial part of it, I can build a new shortcut in half an hour, and it's ready to go because they're so simple. It's hard to even introduce bugs in them because they're so simple. So I think it's fantastic, and we're going to see it in so many more apps now because the barrier for entry is so much lower.
Nice. That's awesome. I feel like I'm imagining like an Apple product manager hearing those words, and that's like a dream. It's like, oh, it's just perfect. And so
I'm sure they're all listening.
Not perfect.
I mean, obviously, there's definitely going to be bugs. I'm glad to hear that though, because I think seeing shortcuts, I like didn't know that you couldn't go as deep with shortcuts in some ways, and I think I understood some of the barriers to entry, but I thought it was more just like people didn't understand what kind of shortcuts to make, not literally like it's just hard to do that also. So I think like being able to experiment and really like, is this shortcut make sense, or the action I should say. I think the whole naming thing is like they used the word Siri shortcuts one time in the App Store again, and I was like, oh, it's back, but then they changed it, so now I'm like, I don't know. I think it's just shortcuts. It's the shortcuts app, shortcuts, the new app shortcuts feature. I do think the confusing part is every developer does talk about app intents, and that's the new capabilities that are added into shortcuts that aren't just the app shortcuts that are generated automatically for you. And so that's kind of a confusing thing, because I like totally focused on app shortcuts, but like a bunch of people just added new actions, and focus filters also are built using the same APIs, but it doesn't require an action in shortcuts. And then also, I don't remember all the complexities of it, but so I think that whole thing is definitely an interesting difference this year. What are like, I know, so Emmanuel, I was talking with you earlier about just like the differences with the actions how you can go deeper. Can you like speak to any of that, how you implemented that in card pointers? Or did you do the find action?
Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah. So exactly. That's an interesting app intent. It was kind of confusing at first until I found some sample code. That's one thing that I think Apple missed a little bit in this release, is there wasn't a lot of examples from Apple for how to build these things. Fortunately, there were a number of people on Twitter who kind of stepped up and did a lot of experimentation and posted those in some GitHub repos. There was Alex Hay did a great one. And I've shared that link with a lot of folks. I think it helped Michael for sure. I'm not sure if we'll use that one as well. But there was that. There's also a guy working on a bookkeeper app who shared a lot of knowledge on there. And so that was super helpful. But that app intent in particular for sorting and filtering, it's great how now it gives you automatically that really cool user interface that just kind of works, and it's consistent across all apps. So if you have like
do that before, but you just didn't have the interface, was that the difference?
Yeah, you have to configure all those different parameters, like sort by to find like any, or find all the different parameters and such. You just have to define all of that yourself. Whereas here, you define it all in app intent. You define like what kind of data it is, how to look that up. If you're using core data, you can map it basically to those queries, and then it gives you all of the interface and everything for free. And it's great how it's consistent between all the apps now. So if an app implements that, then you know how to exactly use that shortcut in that app to filter through like the content that they have in the app.
That makes sense. I think that's why I never really fully clicked that you could do that before. You just had to put in a lot of work, because some apps had that, and I was wondering why they like announced it like it was new. But it's much easier now, so that sounds great too. Because I mean, the big thing for shortcuts users, I think this is kind of like workflow type stuff beyond like. It is interesting how app shortcuts are kind of the Siri side of things, and then the actions and custom shortcuts are kind of like the deeper side. And just being able to do that in shortcuts, being able to get information out of your app, then let me choose from a list, then pass that into the next action that then creates the recipe or starts the focus session or something like that. That's like super, super important to someone like me, because I need that to be able to do like deeper level of shortcut stuff. And so I think that was it sounds like they attacked it from both sides, which is actually really cool. Is there like a middle ground that they're missing? in between there now, or like maybe we can save that for later of like what else they could add to this.
I want them to try and be a little bit less smart. I find there's little things where, like when I define like a type, like a recipe, and I say this is the recipe that I'm going to give to the Shortcuts app, they're trying to be really clever in how they display that to the user when you have like multiple recipes or one recipe, or how they make things like plurals and not. And it can be, for me at least, it felt like a black box trying to figure out where they were getting some of the information from. Because I would be looking at it and say like recipes with an S, and I go, well, there's nowhere in my code where I've told it to make a plural out of it, but like, cool, it's working here. And then in other areas it wouldn't. And I don't know whether a user would be confused about that, or when I'm looking at it and I say find recipes, and it's called find recipes, even though I haven't told it to call itself that, but it's called itself that, and then it returns recipe singular. But
yeah,
it's
there's
actually
like
got like 20
or something. Yeah.
Well, it'll come back as a singular noun when it actually has like 20 items in it. And I don't know whether that's like a decision they made or like a weird thing. They're trying to be smart about it, but I almost want them to like give us more control over the display to the user. But I don't know, that might be a tall order.
Yeah. Do either of you guys know if is that like, did you run into something like that, or could that be how your information
that could be my
is
fault.
designed? Like, because that's what I'm just I don't actually know, so that's why I'm asking.
There's a lot of magic in it, and when I first implemented it and I saw like some sample code with it, I thought that couldn't be all there was to it, because I wasn't like returning like anything really, like it just didn't make sense to me that that's how it would work. But I compiled it and I ran, and then I saw that shortcut that just appeared, and I could find cards, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But I think it's Apple's general direction to do a lot of kind of like automatic magical stuff. I mean, Swift UI suffers from this in some ways, where there's so much stuff that it does that you don't know what it's necessarily doing behind the scenes. Here it's a little bit different because you do control how to populate, some parts of it, but there are strings in there that I have no control over that won't necessarily make sense for every app. And as far as I can tell, there's no way to customize that, but still a good starting point. I think some more tweaks would be great, but good starting point.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I'd probably suggest that it'd be fantastic if there was more control around the type of primary prompt that like behind, I guess, the app's intent itself. Where, like for example, last night with the timer app, right? I was trying to like start a timer with like the voice command, but even though like the app's name was like slightly different, the timer app, just like the shortcuts for that, for the clock app, I guess, would just override, and take priority. It'd be fantastic if you could like I wouldn't say set like a primary app for a phrase, but at least, if there's like another app that has app shortcuts that has similar phrases to other apps, at least have the option if Siri's confused. I would love to see that. I just,
like
I noticed that last night.
I definitely, I mean, I have so many shortcuts. It just can't even understand, or like if it's just close at all to something that sounds like a command that Siri would normally get, it can just like override your thing. I mean, that whole part, I'm honestly, I don't know if you guys like, I wrote some articles about app shortcuts. I'm still just very curious to see what normal people think about not being able to say like card pointers for, I mean, in theory, so I think Emmanuel's example, because you have so many generated, it can actually solve the problem of like, there's no query. Like I can't just say whatever store I'm at, except for the fact that you have already created so many options that it might have already figured it out. So I think that's where I'm just curious for like end users, if they're just going to be upset that I can't say, find this recipe, find a rice recipe. And like, you have to generate a thing that says find rice recipes. And like,
yeah, well, so, I mean, that's something I like wanted to actually build, was to say, if I've got an ingredient left over, how can I find a recipe that uses it so it doesn't go bad? And so I think I settled on saying like find a recipe in Pestle or something like that. And that was the phrase. And then it would ask you, what ingredient do you want to cook with? But I can't say find me recipes that use rice unless I have a suggested thing of every single ingredient. And that would be, I think, the same thing with card pointers. Is if I said card pointers for so and so, but that place wasn't in the card pointers database. As far as I know, there's no way for developers to provide like a, sorry, we don't have that store in our database.
Yeah.
It's just instead Siri's like, well, we don't know what shortcut you're trying to run. We don't know what you're trying to do.
I think that's what I'm kind of worried about.
Yeah,
I will say
great
though,
if I could say.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
it would be great if you could say find a recipe in Pestle with rice, and Siri could come back and say like, that sounds really close to just find me a recipe in Pestle. Did you mean that? And then they know next time to go a little bit lighter on the information at the start, and I'll prompt them through the rest.
Yeah.
But unless you have a perfect match to Siri, Siri acts like it's never heard of your app before.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I do think this is just sort of like my feedback to you guys is like, I do think app shortcuts are designed to create every version of that for you. Like in theory, if you have that thing that shows like I have leftover rice, that should be donated and it should like populate those for me, because I do think otherwise, like that's kind of why I wrote that article about this is what Siri is now. And so like I don't think they're going to add that. I think app shortcuts is the solution. Is just like making as many options as feasible or like more than feasible, a little unreasonable.
But then,
and then it's
then it gets down to Siri's almost losing some of its smarts. Like part of Siri is the natural language understanding.
Totally.
And if all you're doing is exact phrases, like it's not smart then. It's just
it's on Rails
recall.
pretty much, right?
There's alternates though. Wasn't Emmanuel, don't you have those? Like
Yeah, you can set up alternate phrases for anything, like with the parameters, or if it's just just with the app. The one requirement is that it has to have the application name every time, which can be frustrating depending on your card name. But yeah, you can set up alternates to help for if people would phrase it differently. So that's helpful. But you can't just do like a total free form. I got around that by adding all those store names up front. But ultimately, if someone searches for card pointers for some store that doesn't exist, they're going to think, either it's just not going to appear, but most likely I think what people will think is that that's Siri being Siri again, and it just didn't understand me.
Yeah.
Because it errors out in the same way. It just says, oh, I don't understand that, or I can't help you with that.
I wonder, but then you have your main one that's kind of like the fallback, or like you even have you call it the wizard of like, just pick for me too. And maybe that's a good solution for like any app to have, just to like, do the smarts as the developer and then just run the shortcut that says pick for me.
Yeah, because you ask the question like, is there a store for X, and then like that sort of you get a chance to like return a yes or no for that.
I mean, but like I thought at least with the earlier versions of the APIs, if you had like parameters, if those are left blank, Siri will ask, but it just can't be in the initial phrase. I think that's where
I think Siri will ask. I mean, if you have a phrase set up for a shortcut that doesn't include the parameter, you can then include in the shortcut like a question. So you can have when your shortcuts run, you won't necessarily have all your parameters unless you kind of guarantee it, but you can ask for it. And so I could say, for example, with the same shortcut, have find me a recipe in Pestle with rice, or find me a recipe in Pestle, and they'd be just two separate phrases that I set up. And if you call the one without rice, when I run the shortcut, I'll see that your ingredient is empty, and I'll ask you, what do you want to cook with? So that's an option. But unless, if you say head of broccoli instead of broccoli or something, Siri was just going to go, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because
I'm curious in practice, the whole part of what you guys are saying is like Apple does have their intelligence, hopefully, that can sort of disambiguate. Like this is kind of where I just wish we had more clarity from them about how it'll match to these shortcuts. Because I mean, I still have trouble just triggering my own shortcuts sometimes too by using the exact phrase, and there's nothing else disambiguating for it. So
I think it's still a good, the same thing. I think it's, everything has to be done incrementally, right? So this is kind of, phase one for giving us this kind of control. Actually, it's kind of phase two, actually. Like phase one was when they had the Siri intents for, I think it was just limited to like exercise apps and music apps, where it did have more of like you set up a structure of what you're looking for, and then it basically then converts from text from speech to text, and then it queries your app, and then it can return results, and that's how the podcast apps worked and everything. So they haven't given us that yet, and I think the reason for that is because they need to be able to control how many of these predefined things that it can hear, and understands. If you're going to support lots of apps, it's going to have a lot that it has to search through on device. And I think this is the next step towards that. I think the evolution will be more of kind of a mixture of both, where you can set up a structure of the sentence, like card pointers for X, and then you query the app for that query, and then it can return that. That's probably where things will go eventually. But for now,
sorry, I'm just curious, is that like feasible? Because that's where I'm curious, or if this is actually like all it'll be.
I think it'll go there. With time. I mean, look at the advances in technology, right, over the last 20 years. But no, like, without a doubt, I think that's where we'll go there. It's going to use the same system where it's going to be a Bling parameter name. So it'll probably be, Siri will pass a text equivalent of that last parameter name, do a quick lookup, and then, return if you have results. I think that's where it'll go. But you can't do everything at once.
I think that's why I'm trying to like parse out that this isn't ideal, but that's what it is now. And so if somebody like Emmanuel is able, like, you're already fully taking advantage of it, and Siri now can do tons with card pointers specifically just because you pre-populated that all. And otherwise, I think the part about what you were saying where before they predefined a couple set of intents and that's all everybody could develop, now they like open this up, and I don't think it was like super clear, or like, I don't know, I just didn't see a ton of apps adopt it right away, and it is brand new. But I feel like I would imagine before people were like, oh, like, let me get into Siri, and now you can, and then like they don't even realize that this is how, and it's this sort of like weird middle ground that isn't actually what people think of as a smart assistant. So I'm trying to like figure out, is this just like the like harsh reality that it's like Siri's only right here in this middle, but at least it works. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting transition point as well. Like, I guess if you look at it through the lens of a developer, moving from that intent definition file to having it all sort of statically, defined in a file now, I feel like would give Apple, like, or the Shortcuts development team, more flexibility to tack onto that rather than having that clunky UI that's been around since, I mean, Jesus, for years now, I'd say anyway. But and then I guess like at the same time, like the Apple development team will need to sort of write a fine line with not making that app shortcut setup too difficult as well for developers, because now it's like super easy and great, to get into, but let's just hope it's not for 1 year, but at least with this sort of like next step, because I'm sure they've got things planned out, for the next like iOS 17, right? And like this would be I feel like a massive turning point with increasing adoption, but also with getting people to set up more complex shortcuts. Getting developers to set up more complex sort of app shortcuts, right? So end users can just easily sort of, tack things together and, I guess allow the Apple development team to improve Siri's interpretation of certain things, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's literally just a text file. It's amazing that you can just like write all this up now. And my point before as well, like localization, like if you want to put your app around the world to like 30 countries, for example, right? Your old process was like you'd use a translation service. Like, for example, I use Crowdin for focused work, right? And Ohi. And like I asked people to, I guess, like provide translations to like like 500 strings kind of thing, right? But when it comes to adding that into the project pre-iOS 16, that was like a mess. Like, in short, it was a mess, because you got to match up strings to numbers and stuff, right? And you got to make sure you got the right numbers, because there's like, it's all automatically generated now. And I feel at the moment it's like literally just like 1-to-1 with matching up strings. So yeah, it's like this. I feel like this is an important year, and the next year, like you would feel that there would be some sort of big evolution from a developer side of things, given how capable the new system is to create app shortcuts for apps.
Yeah.
That's how I feel anyway about it.
That makes sense. I'm glad to like hear that, especially. I'm curious. I think what I'm sort of like just worried about is like it is up to developers to take it to a certain level and things like that. And is that clear from Apple where you should go, or is it? Because I think that's kind of why you guys all do have like a spread of how many app shortcuts you made. And so I'm curious why you chose that, and if it's like, do you think like people won't use that if you add it in, that kind of thing? Because I see that all the time from developers, and I think that's totally fair. I think before, the amount of work compared to the return was what a lot of people like didn't want to put it in, because people might not use the shortcuts enough. But I think it's sort of like now it is up to the developers to put it in. Otherwise, we're never going to, I don't have the choice to use shortcuts if you don't make them for me in app shortcuts, sort of. Like the custom shortcuts thing is going to be a lot more of a me pushing, but you guys can pull your users in so much more now than before.
Well, Apple are pushing discoverability with the new shortcuts APIs. Like in Pestle, when you add something to your meal plan for the first time, you'll get a little thing on it that says, like, "Hey Siri, what's on my meal plan today?" And
you might have just triggered. Yeah, I was gonna say.
I did. But it comes up and it tells you that you can use Siri for this. And I got to sprinkle them into more parts of my app, but it's tricky because of my tech stack and everything. But they're pushing discoverability, and it's not entirely clear to me whether they want really quick action shortcuts, whether that's what they're thinking is shortcuts should be fast interaction, not a lot of back and forth, or whether they're okay with having these long-running shortcuts that people make in the Shortcuts app that ask you like 10 different questions to achieve things.
I think there's a slide somewhere that says it should be fast.
It probably is, but there's also a slide that says Swift UI is the best way to build apps. So
nice.
I still agree with that. So we can argue about that one.
I still want to be able to make those shortcuts, but I think for app shortcuts, you should generate as many simple ones as you can, and then have a couple that I could do that multi-step experience. And especially if in theory, by generating some of them, you can like get rid of my need to do the multi-step thing. I think that's kind of the big part.
Well, that was my thinking with like, I've got more actions than I do generated app shortcuts. I mean, depends how many, if you have 12 folders, then you'll have more shortcuts. But in terms of single app shortcuts, I have more actions that I want people to be able to plug into their other workflows than I do actual shortcuts. Like I don't have a shortcut that can share a recipe with a partner or generate a shopping list for you. But those are all things you can do with shortcuts with Pestle if you're a power user and that's what you want to do. I have a couple pre-generated shortcuts, mainly around meal planning and like folder stuff. But for the most part, it's just I'm still building a tool, from my point anyway, for power users. I don't feel yet like I'm building shortcuts for the average user. Like I'm not building shortcuts for my mum, put it that way.
Why do
I'm
you
building
say that?
shortcuts for, well, because it still feels like this app that people don't know about. People don't know what shortcuts is, despite Apple pushing it. Most people don't watch WWDC. Shortcuts isn't pushed that hard on iPhone unless you use like the Apple Store app, and it will say you can check your order status. But that still doesn't mention shortcuts. That just says you can talk to Siri. So people don't know even that they are using shortcuts when they are.
So wouldn't that justify the other way though? That
it would, yes. So I see what you mean. It would justify building things that are more focused on end users to get more regular people to use it. But I
Yeah,
still, I don't know. It feels like I'm building a tool for power users, and I'm fine with
totally.
that.
I think,
And I want more regular people, but I don't think we're there
yeah,
yet.
I think with app shortcuts, I think their goal with those Siri tips is that your mom never needs to open the shortcuts app or have heard about it at all. And
Yeah,
that
right.
by you automatically generating these, and then she just uses your app, sees the thing, she can just ask Siri and then it just runs. Versus if she has to go in and set up that shortcut, the custom shortcut, she's never going to do that. And so, unless she really liked using all your Siri shortcuts and then eventually realized it was in the shortcuts app or something, or like you have that little button that takes you into the shortcuts, that's like huge discoverability right there, as it just goes directly in, at least.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
those Siri tip
I
views,
agree.
that's the game changer. I think anyone who's
Mm.
using my app, and I'm training them to say card pointers for whatever store. And the way I do that is I show that Siri tip view at the top the first time they ever look at a store or category name. It tells you right there. You can X out of it, but nothing on there is branded shortcuts, right? It's literally the little Siri icon, and it says, say card pointers for Starbucks, and then that's it. So then they just learn that it's just part of Siri. So I don't think Apple wants to push people to the shortcuts app because
Totally.
that is a power user thing. So to the
Mm.
average user, that's just, it's Siri has a new power that's, powered by your app and it can do these things. But that's it. The fact that you can then go in and use that as a starting point to build a shortcut, that's kind of like a gateway drug to that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for those users, it will be helpful. But for your layperson, it's just an automatic thing. It's just you're enabling a new thing in Siri, and that's all that they think it is.
Totally. And I think many people's main experience with the shortcuts app is going to be opening it up, seeing a list of auto-generated shortcuts, and then using those with Siri. And like maybe they'll add those couple extra steps and have their own custom shortcuts in a bundle. But in theory, they should have 600 app shortcuts made for them that they can already use with Siri, and they didn't even ever have to use shortcuts in the first place too. So I think that's why I was saying, like, just to go back to like the rice example, like I actually totally, like, I'm trying to convince you right now to do that because I want that so that I don't have to make that shortcut, because otherwise I like that's like my whole method of making those in the first place was in lieu of having these, and even just that Apple doesn't generate them for the built-in actions. So like I totally think that most apps should have, like, anything that you can do in your app should be an app shortcut, and then you have a subset that are the shortcuts actions that enable me to build workflows with those. But beyond that, I should be able to just be like, oh, I just use this thing in your app, talk to Siri, and then okay, it does actually, it shows up in the shortcuts app.
Yeah, and it's really easy to add them as well. The Siri tip views. It's like, I think it's just one line of code. Really, you just pass in that intent you made for the app shortcut and just
That's
done.
cool.
And just litter them in your app in the right places. And people will use them because it's there, right? Just say, like, as long as you keep your phrase basic, so it rolls off the tongue. Great, yeah.
That whole part. Just so wait, there you can use an alternate to the app name, right? Isn't that a thing?
App synonyms, yeah.
Because I think that's going to be the thing that, I don't know. If I was an app developer, I would try to get my key phrase and get people used to it before somebody else has an alternate phrase that's too similar or something like that. Not that it's like
I need to find one for Pestle. I don't feel like there's many synonyms for Pestle.
But like, can you just do recipe? And like, that's kind of why I'm curious how generic it can.
I don't think there's a limit on it, because I know a developer makes an app called RC Kit, which is for a tool called Revenue Cat, and he has Revenue Cat as a synonym for his app, and so you can just say, show me Revenue Cat stats, and it will use his app to do it. So I imagine I could create a phrase that's just like recipe means pestle, or recipes. So I could say, I could get kind of cheeky with it and say, show me recipes for blank, and that would.
I feel like I want you guys to like experiment with these things and see what experience you can get for the end user, because I think that's where I mean, Apple's putting, like, this is, I don't know, I still like one of the team members retweeted my article saying that they put this is their big bet. So I was like, oh, does that just mean I'm right? Like, I was curious about that, but I just feel like they're really doing a lot with this. And I don't know if you guys saw the teaser that's like Shortcuts is going to be some part of their VR thing, like that leak from. I barely saw anything about it, and nobody talked about it. I still feel like Shortcuts is like a weird, ugly duckling sort of thing where it's like nobody uses it, and then it'll be like, oh, there's some TikTok where they said they actually use it, and now everybody believes it.
I mean,
Oh
I
yeah,
think, like,
trying to get a viral TikTok.
Exactly.
That's the goal.
I gotta get on it right now. Like,
I want to take a brief.
Going.
Do you need to dip out for a second?
No, I was going to say Josh wants Michael and I to hold up our shirt.
Oh yeah, totally.
I don't know how to reply in the chat. There's like no box for me to type
I wanted to
in,
get to
so,
that.
like...
I wanted to like hold my shirt up so we can get.
Do yours.
There we go.
Get it.
Wait, the camera's here. Yeah.
Nice.
My bloody beard, man.
All right, Josh.
Can't...
You better have taken your screenshot, Josh. That's
we
all
can
the
we
distraction.
can rewind.
Yeah, do it again. I was covering it before. Go again.
oh man. All right, hang on. There we go.
Thanks, Josh.
It's I'm trying to like move and like the camera's in reverse, so like my brain's just like wait.
Yeah.
I was gonna say just quickly to that point when you're like defining phrases in your app shortcuts, I haven't tried it out yet, but can you omit the app name? Because I'm like trying to like put phrases in and like it just feels like I'm shoehorning the app name in some respects, and that's like doing my head in. Because like it's like, you know, writing that in English is one thing, but then having to like do the whole overhead of translating that or localizing it in a different language, and like me not knowing obviously how to speak other languages, like I don't know if it, you know, it flows right. You just kind of like
I feel like that comes out of like the name.
I don't think you can
of just like making a name that flows. You gotta like pick your app name to work well with Siri now, I guess.
Well, that's where the app synonyms come in, right? So with the app synonyms, you can define 3 of them. The tricky thing about that is that Apple, in their documentation for app synonyms, is it has to be a name that a user would normally use for your app. So with RCKit, that's interesting that he actually built that in, because I told him about that, and I think that's how that happened. But you know, RC stands for Revenue Cat, so it's reasonable that would stand for that. But ultimately, you're at the behest of the app reviewer, and if they think it's appropriate. So for focused work, you could probably get away with like Pomodoro, but that's not a very good one to say. But like, you know, timer or, you know, like focus session or something else.
Do you reckon App Review do review this app synonyms?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and you could probably like say, I want these specifically for shortcuts purposes too, or something like that.
At the same time, a reviewer is not really going to know much about your app, right? They're churning through tons of those per day. So as long as it's not something like really bad, like if you're not trying to override an Apple app, right? If you're not trying to override like weather or something like that.
You don't say like text mom and open up Pestle.
I think like the recipes one is what I'm just curious. I know that there's at least 4 apps that have app shortcuts that make recipes right now. And so like if you all adopt that same synonym, what's going to happen? Yeah. Nice.
I'll just have to get in there before them.
Yeah,
I can.
I mean, maybe it'll
claim that they're playing foul.
Hopefully, just the whole with like music apps or podcast apps, it says which app do you want to use. Like that's the kind of thing that maybe, and then it's just like in settings or Siri settings has like a phrase. I don't know. Like there's definitely more that they could do with this. Especially for me as an end user, I want the control too. Like I want to be able to choose what your key phrase is and then generate the app shortcuts off of that. So like if there was just a part in settings that let me change the Siri phrase or something like that, that'd be awesome. I'm verbally filing feedback, by the way. I do that all the time on streams. Is I just say the thing, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come back and find this timestamp.
I was just thinking like on a side tangent, now that they've got this system in where you can actually speak phrases to apps and put in your phrases right, how cool would it be if like you ask Siri for something and you don't have the app installed and it just like puts up a bunch of recommended app store results for that phrase? It's like the App Store team would like cache everyone's phrases somehow, right? And like add that sort of alternate element to app discovery.
I'm
I never
almost
really thought about
positive
that, but now that we
Amazon
speak about
has Amazon has something like that. If you ask for something that your Echo
it.
can't do, or you can't do yet, it'll find like the best app and do it. I mean, that's Echo is a little bit different, but like even with app clips, I wonder if there could be some sort of like Siri clip. Ooh, marketing
Yeah,
term
yeah, yeah.
right
Like
there.
you pass on the phrase right, and then it loads up an app clip,
Yeah,
and then that's very interesting. Yeah, yeah.
that'd be good.
Mm. But one thing neither of you mentioned, I reckon the hidden win out of all this with the app shortcuts is how awesome Spotlight search is now on the
Yeah.
iPhone. You literally just swipe down and you have recommended. I noticed this when I was when I saw Federico's from Mac Stories when he did his iOS 16 review that he took a few screenshots of just Spotlight. I don't think it was related to focus work, but that was like the top
Were you in
recommendation there.
Nice.
Yeah, like literally, the app was the only recommendation there. I'm thinking like that's insane. That even if you don't like use Siri at all or use app shortcuts in the shortcuts app, just having that there, like the action for your app based on time of day or I'm sure it's
Totally.
like sort of tracking when you use those things. Because you've obviously when you perform actions in your app, you've got to donate actions to like at least tell iOS that you're using your app right, and then it uses its own intelligence to recommend those actions at certain parts of the day. But yeah, that's fantastic. That just being able to swipe down and
I think that's gonna be.
like for me,
I
start
mean,
focus it.
search is on the home screen now too, so like that. I think that's gonna be how people discover app shortcuts.
Is
And
there a widget for it?
well, it replaced the home screen dots. There's just a search field right in the center of your home screen now. I'm assuming every developer immediately went in and turned this off because I did it as well.
Oh yeah, there is too.
I don't mind it.
I just realized.
Yeah,
I love it.
But like,
I don't
but
ever
I think
use it.
that's
I
gonna
just pull down. But
I think that's going to be. They've like made huge moves in search in the last couple of years. Like I think a lot of people don't Google stuff because iPhone can find it now, and so that's like I think that's a big deal for Apple, and putting every keyword that is an app shortcut from your app into search. And like if I go to Target and look it up, Card Pointers is going to show up every time, and like that stuff is, I feel like, huge for discoverability.
especially the location based, you know, if you use the same shortcut every time you go to different stores,
Totally.
it's just going to start recommending it.
I feel like I use like the Siri suggestions widget too, and those are like getting better and better. It kind of kills me because it always resets when I get a new phone, and that's like the dumb thing is it should learn year over year.
Are you like when with the new phones? Are you doing the migration assistant sort of thing, or are you just starting fresh with a new device?
I did like a wireless transfer, and
Oh, really?
that
So
worked
that
fine.
didn't get passed across either. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I'm not really sure to be honest, because I don't have any insight into like how it's making the recommendations. But I just noticed like I don't know. I even just because I noticed that TikTok added one to like go to your For You page. I was like, if TikTok's doing it, that's like makes me pay attention because they're making moves right now.
Yeah.
I feel like the Spotlight thing is huge. Can you? I don't think I've even tried it. Can you add it to shortcuts if you long press on it?
Good question.
I think we're all checking. I don't think so.
You can do
long
that
press?
from the widget,
No.
which is nice.
No, I can drag it, but if I let go on like the home screen,
I get a
nothing.
strange preview of my widget, like with nothing in it. I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Do you have the whole like part where your shortcuts can show UI and stuff like that in the Siri experience? Because
I do.
okay, then I would have
Yeah.
assumed it would show it there if it was smart enough. I mean, I'm curious. Shortcuts do run in the dynamic island. Like they don't really like expand out like I kind of expected them to do, but that could just be for this current beta. So that's a whole super interesting. I feel like I'm just like seeing all these things like slowly shift into place with especially shortcuts. I mean a lot of people too are talking about just the VR opportunities. It's like if your whole app already works with voice, you're already set up to be in those spaces too.
I think that's the important thing is to think about where Apple is going next, like with hardware, with these rumored glasses. like in AR in particular. I think all these things are building towards that, and that could also be why there are these limits, so that a device that doesn't have like a crazy processor can actually process, store these thousands of shortcut variations and process it immediately. I wonder if the dynamic island would appear like on a glass. Like that could actually be really cool, right? It gets out of your way, a little summary thing of what's going on there. That's another really good use case for that. So that's what I always like to do, is think about where they're going with things, and why they're introducing things. And oftentimes they'll drop little hints that perhaps unintentionally, some perhaps intentionally, in some session videos. And it's always really valuable to watch as many of those as possible to kind of get these glimpses of where things are headed. And that's also why we're incentivized as developers to integrate these new features and technologies, because we're going to get these things more or less for free. It's like if you adopted Swift UI early on, as much as Will said that wasn't the future of development, like it is, because
no,
it's powering these things. So not right now.
You've got me wrong. It is 100% the future of development on the Apple platform. I believe in Swift UI for the future. And I believe in it in iOS 16, actually. I don't believe in it before that. And I use it in Pestle, just very sparingly.
I like suffered under that and with shortcuts for Mac, so I totally I feel like it wasn't ready either. I could attest to that. But I totally agree. Especially, I think the big thing is that the end user gets this stuff for free, like especially with shortcuts and just app shortcuts in particular. Like that, I already have 400 new shortcuts, and I didn't set them up like a crazy person like I do. It was just made for me, and so like that's going to be the thing that makes a difference for people. And I think I'm just excited to see you guys adopt it to start off, and I want to see as many apps get in here and do that as well, because I think that's just like Siri is a lot more powerful already, and it is up to app developers to go as far into the experience as you can in order to like let Siri do whatever she wants with your app. Even the other thing I thought of was the if they had a HomePod with a little screen, and you could run your shortcuts and it could just like show the interface and stuff like that, especially Pestle. Yeah, I was like recipes is like the killer thing right there.
I would love a little HomePod. I think Amazon have one with a little screen on it and actually can guide you through recipes.
Yeah.
And I also want, when I think about AR glasses, I think about how cool it would be to have a virtual like guided cooking thing. And Pestle's got kind of the groundwork. Like
it's already there.
It wouldn't be it's got the guided cooking experience, and I can just swap out that for an AR view. I think it would be super cool to have the glasses on, have it in front of you telling you what to do, and then integrate it with shortcuts, like tap the air to text a shopping list to someone. I think that'd be sweet.
That's cool. Just like, I think making the Siri, I am excited, like what you were saying earlier, Emmanuel, with the evolution of how you interact with Siri, and just not having to like say card pointers to every single, like if I want to use it multiple times in a row, I have to say it multiple times in a row. Like there should be like a session or something like that. But that's all for people smarter than me to figure out at Apple. So, which is great, because I feel like what's always so hard, and especially because of where we came from with Siri, I feel like it's very easy not to believe that this is going to do anything or work at all. And I think they have sort of found what seems like a kind of an odd route where they can kind of guarantee that it should work with your app, and then they can take that to the next level, hopefully. So I'm pretty excited to see it all. Do you guys have any like closing thoughts on app shortcuts in iOS 16 or?
Probably not for iOS 16. For macOS, yes. I'm still disappointed there's no automation support in Ventura. I was really hanging out for that. This is a side note.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Are app shortcuts even on the Mac? It's not even a thing, right?
I couldn't. So with focus work, I had to. Like when I was trying to set up focus filters for iOS, right? I tried to run my Catalyst build, and apparently unless it was like my version of Xcode, but I ended up
it won't build.
App extension. Like I had to create a separate app extension for my use case just for the app intents, or for the focus filters, and it said that this isn't supported in Catalyst. I'm like, so you can't use it on the Mac.
Because
it is though. I think
It is.
Well, so when I look at like the documentation, it says Mac OS and Mac Catalyst have app intent support.
Interesting.
There was an Xcode thing where if you were using if you were using an Xcode beta while you were on, oh no, if you were using Xcode release, I think while you were on Ventura, it wouldn't build, and if you're using Xcode beta while you're on Monterey, it wouldn't build. But if you're using, it was really weird.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying. Yeah.
It
I didn't
stuffed up
even-
my Mac Catalyst build. It won't. I can't build Mac Catalyst now off my main branch until that gets cleaned up.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
Oh,
don't.
well.
There's not even an app shortcuts. I think the app intents and the stuff, those advanced actions work, but there's not even a section for app shortcuts in the Mac app. So that's why I'm just like, I think the clarity on some of that stuff is also what I'd love. As
that's
a
really
shortcuts
bizarre.
person. Just like, did this even come to the Mac? Like what?
Mm.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
are people gonna use 1,000 different variations of your Siri shortcuts on the Mac? That's going to be like 1%.
Do people use Siri on the
1%.
Mac?
That's what I mean. So like, I don't think that's a
Yeah.
huge loss, but just making sure that's clear too for developers, because app intents as the function to empower like much better shortcuts actions, not just app shortcuts, is still huge. And I want to make sure everybody else adopts that too, because now it seems like, especially on the Mac, it's like, let's go full speed. I want as many apps integrating with shortcuts that I can automate as possible, because that's where people do quote unquote real work. So
Yeah, and we all use command space, right, for Spotlight. So as long as like those recommendations go in there, at
Oh, yeah.
least like that's
They-
sweet.
shortcuts do
like-
at least. So
Yeah.
I use Alfred instead,
that's
but
fair.
Yeah,
still
me
command
too.
space.
Alfred can't read can't process my shortcuts because I have too many, and it can't search through them. It like fails.
Right.
Yeah, right.
If you're- I'll throw a Raycast in there if none of you have used Raycast before. I don't know how it ties in with shortcuts, but it does a lot of
I
like
think
really
very
easy
well.
scripting and stuff too. And I love
Nice.
Raycast. Yeah, I used Alfred and Launchbar and some other things before, but Raycast is amazing.
Yeah, you mentioned Raycast to me a few days ago in like the context of replying to support emails, and for that I use templates in Spark that like fill in the person's name and does all that
Nice.
for me. But I'm not like married to Alfred. I'm happy to shop around and see
Yeah, I
what's
do
better.
shortcuts for that. No, just gotta. I'm all shortcuts everything, but
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a great conversation. I feel like I'm glad to like kind of see all of your experiences combined, especially just like getting this out the door, and where I'm curious to see where Apple takes it next, because pushing this to end users I think is going to be super important, but it's also like you guys are surfacing it already, so I think it'll just take time and some sort of trust. I feel like they got to do like I just want one person in the keynote to be like, you should use this now, like just tell people, and then they'll be like cool or something like that. But until then, it's gonna kind of just be like floating around and like, oh, is this for power users or not? But I think app shortcuts is supposed to kind of like nip that in the bud of like, it is for everybody if you guys let them have them. So
Yeah, let's just hope when the next major OS comes out, they're on top of their documentation game
yeah, that's fair.
that time around. That'd be fantastic.
Well, we can always nudge them.
instead of
I got
us all
low hopes
relying on
for
each
that.
other.
I feel like I just want to file feedback for every page. It's like, this one doesn't have documentation, this one doesn't have, and then we should always also like, for anybody, if anybody's developing for shortcuts, like sharing online, I think seems like, I feel like Emmanuel, like your work and like all those code examples from was it Alex Hay from Toolbox Pro, just like that made this whole community adopt shortcuts, and I think that can go a lot further. Like I want to see people, like we were talking with Christian about doing them for Apollo, and he's like, oh, I don't really know. And it's like, there's so many, like having every shortcut for every subreddit that you're subscribed to and things like that would be awesome, just automatically. So I want to see a lot more, and I want you guys to cheerlead as well.
Without Emmanuel, Pestle wouldn't have shortcuts. There's no way. I
Good to hear.
I reckon I said about 5 questions a day, if not more, for a good week there
Me too.
before it sort of clicked. Yeah.
Yeah, there was
Oh,
Joe with
geez.
GameTrack too. I asked him, I was like, "Well, how about app shortcuts?" He's like, "I don't know. I haven't used them before. What would I use them for?" Or maybe he had some basic ones. And then he spent like a day on it, and then he had like 12 of them, and he was like, "This is awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a really nice API. It's like App Incense and Swift Charts are like the two like nicest little presents from Apple this summer, as far as I'm concerned, and it really gives me hope for kind of like the future APIs if they structure it more like that, where it's super simple to do the basic thing, but it can get really complex if you want it to. That's amazingly powerful. It's really hard to design, and they really did an awesome job with both of those this year.
Nice. That's awesome. That's good to hear.
And also to add to that, even like with widgets, like because it used to use the same, or it still uses the old intent definition of file that you used to create shortcuts with. If they can move that across to their own sort of thing, it would be easier, even easier to add widgets just because of that. Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't do that, but maybe they can take what they learned from doing it with shortcuts and apply that this year. That's what's always interesting. It's like Apple's still developing these, and you guys all ran into bugs developing them. It's like the APIs weren't even actually finished yet either. So I'm glad you're all in this. We're all in this together.
Yeah, and it's been good fun as well. It's been great, and like I just can't wait to add more and more to like the other apps that I build. Because at the end of the day, right, it's just another way to help people get through the door and just learn about things that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Especially, I mean, I just love them because they work across all your devices. So like it really does bring your device across to the Apple Watch and things like that, even if it didn't even have the app there. So
one kind of aspect not covered is another benefit of adopting shortcuts is Apple like promote the hell out of them at the moment.
Totally.
Like Pestles has had its most successful week ever because it got featured in a shortcuts list that Apple made.
Nice.
That's one of the benefits of adopting these APIs early, even when they're not perfect, is they can actually set you up really well, and so that's just another bonus.
And I hope they keep featuring shortcut stuff this year too, because I feel like they've been like, it seems like they were waiting for developers to add it because there's tons of opportunities, and they'll like put any app that has shortcuts in there. If I was in that job, I would totally be like, give me the shortcuts apps like right away. So I totally get that. So I'm glad to hear that did well for you. That's awesome. I was totally retweeting everybody with the goal of people at Apple seeing that stuff too, because it's like, I don't know, it's like not everybody is checking for all the shortcut stuff. So well done with all the promos too. I'm all about indies clearly stating that you have shortcut support in tweets, because then I also find them for my newsletter.
Just make them look nice in the promo art. It goes a long way.
Exactly. If you make it easy for them, they'll adopt it too, which is good. Well, I feel like we should wrap up, but thanks guys for coming on. This has been an awesome conversation. And then I'm gonna try to try to get like an audio version out too, so people can listen in, because they can come look at all of our handsome faces in the replay as much as they want, but I feel like the conversation is the best part. Although Michael's beard is something to behold, that's for sure. Any other comments, or want to promote your apps again real quick, I guess?
Get Pestle if you like cooking.
Michael?
If you like, everyone has to work every day, right? So if you want to do more work every day, then and get more done, download Focus Work.
Nice.
And everyone has to buy things eventually, so you better use the right credit card and earn a lot more points for the purchase and travel for free. That's my favorite thing about credit card points, especially in the US. That's all. Thank you very much, Matthew. I really appreciate everything you've done with shortcuts, and it's helped get me into shortcuts and start learning them. And I'm not as good at making them as you are. So I got a lot to learn from you in that regard as well. But it's been super helpful for the community.
Thanks. If you guys ever want to like talk shortcut stuff, or if I'm ever streaming too and you want to like, if you have something to say, or I don't know, you can always join in. And I'm always just trying to like have more of us be real people on the internet and like talk to each other and stuff like that, because I feel like turning it into that community, I think goes a long way, and sharing developer secrets and stuff like that. So not everybody's running into the exact same bug in isolation and not understanding what's happening is a good example there. So thank you guys for participating in that and making awesome app shortcuts.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it, mate.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will see you in the next stream. All right. Say bye, everybody.
See you, everyone. Bye, chat.
Yeah. All right.